What's going on, guys? This is Chris with Azrael's Pit Barbecue, and in this video, we are making chili con carne with beans. Let's get cooking. Like many of you, I'm sure, we are very passionate about the cooking and the food that we make. And we know that there are lots of people that get a little riled up about some things more than others. When it comes to the topic of chili, nothing will get a conversation heated faster than the beans versus no beans. And I don't know why, but there are certain groups of folks in Texas that seem to really have a problem with it, and it's really not that big of a deal. Chili itself has got so much history and lore and controversy with it, it actually deserves a video of its own just talking about that stuff, and we're going to make that video. But for now, man, if Cincinnati can do this, I can put beans in my chili. So let's get to it. Man, I don't know about you guys, but I absolutely love chili, and I love cooking chili. And this is a personal recipe of mine. As a matter of fact, I would almost go too far to say this is the only recipe that I have that I truly consider mine. I wrote this from scratch, building on years and years and years and multiple recipes that I've worked on from others and recipes where I've cooked up of my own. This is my current version. Started in December of 2013. That's how long we've been messing around with this one. Trying to keep it simple in terms of its ingredients, but it's a bit of a complex cook. One thing that we're doing in this cook is we are very much focusing on the hearty, savory side of our flavor profile. We don't necessarily want to just blow this up with heat. We don't eat really hot foods, so this is perfect for us. Lots of you may certainly eat really hot foods, and you're going to want to amp it up. And we're going to talk about how you make this recipe as your base, build up your heat, and not just blast it out with so much heat that you miss all that other goodness that's there. So with that, let's talk about what you're going to need for this cook, and let's get started. All right, guys, get yourself a pen, pencil, whatever, and some paper. Get ready to take some notes. I've made some graphics of the recipes, relatively plain, so if you have the capability of taking a snapshot of your screen and printing it out, that'll help you too. But I'm going to put these graphics up. If you need to, pause the video and write this down. So for this cook, you're going to need the following. A 3 to 4 pound chuck roast. We'll talk about that more in a moment. 3 cans of fire roasted tomatoes. 1 medium onion with a nice medium or fine chop. 1 cup of a chicken stock. 1 tablespoon of chopped garlic, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of a black pepper coarse grind, 2 teaspoons of cumin, and a half to a tablespoon of an ancho powder. And then you're going to need some APB quick beef rub, which we'll also go over in just a moment. For the bean side of this, you're going to need 2 cans of red kidney beans. This is your typical 15-ounce cans. 1 can of black beans, 1 can of Great Northern. I actually call this my red, white, and blue mix. 1 medium onion, medium to a fine chop. 1 cup of chicken stock. 1 tablespoon of chopped garlic. 2 tablespoons of chili powder. We'll talk about that more in just a moment. 1 tablespoon of black pepper, again a coarse grind. 2 teaspoons of cumin. And a third to a half a cup of pasilla sauce, and we'll talk more about that. All right, guys, let's talk about some of these ingredients, and let's start with that chuck. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I've got a 4-pound chuck roast, which I'm going to cut in half, and half of that is going to get seasoned up and go on my cooker about 225, so I can get a nice smoke on it, give it a little bit of a slow cook. Now, I'm not cooking it that long, however long it takes to get it to about 120, because it's going to finish the cook in with the chili. The other half of that chuck, I'm going to cut into strips. I'm going to season it up, run it through my grinder, and that's going to be my ground beef. So I appreciate that a lot of folks don't necessarily have a grinder. So your alternate to this is to buy the 2-pound chuck and then buy yourself 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds of an 80/20 coarse grind or chili grind ground beef. Now guys, when I say chili powder, I'm referring to American chili powder, such as these. These are mild chili powders. And these are not just ground chili of some type. These are a blend. They have garlic in them and they have salt in them and some other odds and ends. So chili powder. And this is what we're going to use as a little bit of a base. It'll have some chili powders in it, whatever, but it's not going to be the end all be all to our flavor. Now, one thing to note about these is you can get them in mild and medium now, or hot even. Now I'm doing mine in a mild. If you want a hotter chili, this is one place to start. You go into a medium or something. What I want you to really keep in mind is don't go crazy with the heat at this point. Way too early for that. This is, again, going to be multiple cooks that are going to come together. So there's going to be a combining effect here across all three of these. So be careful on the front end. So if you want to do a medium or so heat chili powder, that's cool. As opposed to an actual chili powder. For example, chipotle chili powder, ancho chili powder. You know, you can start taking these types of things and blending them together. Or if you really want to go crazy, you can do something like this. This is actually habanero chili powder that we made ourselves. Grew the chilies, dehydrated them, and ground them. And we have these, and we actually have some ghost pepper and some others, Tabascos and actual red chilies. So I have quite a few options if I wanted to make my own blend. Or this is the type of chili powder I would recommend you consider in terms of cranking up the heat, as opposed to using something that you bought at a store or some kind of liquid of some type that has other things in it and not just straight chili powder. And to be fair to the history of chili, chili powder would be much more accurate. Let's talk about this chili sauce. Now this is pasilla chili, and this is what a dried pasilla looks like. This is a really nice chili. I really like this one. It's almost got a fruity smell to it, maybe. I'm not quite sure how to put my finger on it. It's just a very nice aroma. It's very mild, almost a fruity, kind of smoky taste to it. So that's the basis that I use for my chili side of my chili. Now, I can't make a sauce out of this yet, so I use the Herdez pasilla sauce. This is a pretty rare thing. You won't see me point to a off-the-shelf type sauce of any type very often. But in this case, this is what I'm using right now until I can get my own chili sauce the way I like it. You can go whatever route you want to here. Just keep some things in mind. The chili sauce needs to be a chili sauce, not a chili sauce that's been jacked up and everything else. Something that would be relatively natural. This chili sauce has the pasilla in it. It's got some garlic in it. It's got some salt in it, maybe a little vinegar in it, but it's not a blend necessarily, and it doesn't have anything kicking the heat up. It is whatever it is. You could get the same thing in like a chipotle or something like that and kind of work your way up. Or you could make your own chili sauce. And hey, if you're good enough to make your own chili sauce, then do whatever you want. Now make sure you keep your pen and paper handy, because here in just a moment, we're going to talk about the APB Quick Beef Rub. However, before we do that, one last thing. When I get to the stove part of this, I use 2 large pots. I have a 6-quart pot and a 7-quart pot. My 7-quart pot is my final, that's where everything lands pot, and it is oven safe. So if you can have a 6 to 7-quart pot that is oven safe, that would be awesome. Now the reason why I use the other one is because these beans and the meat get kind of cooked separately and later they get combined. You'll see that in just a few moments when we get to that part of this cook. So just be aware, you need 2 good sized pots, and if one of them could be oven safe with a lid, that would be perfect. So guys, let's make some APB Quick Beef Rub. You're going to need a tablespoon of chili powder. I'm using a mild chili powder here. This is just ye old American chili powder blend, not a chile powder. I'm going to use a tablespoon of paprika. This is a Spanish paprika. I would say that if you're going to not be able to get your beef out on a smoker or cooker or something outside, you might consider using a bit of a smoked paprika here, although I don't necessarily know that I would use a full tablespoon because it can be pretty strong. I'm also going to use a tablespoon of a coarse grind black pepper, a tablespoon of granulated garlic, not garlic powder, a half a tablespoon of cumin. Now, cumin's going to show up in several places during this cook, so it'll be an accumulative thing. Then a tablespoon of an onion powder. And we're going to top it off with a half a tablespoon of ancho powder. You can put a little bit more, but again, the chiles and the things that are going to bring warmth to this recipe are going to be accumulative. So just take it easy on the front end. There'll be more down the road, and we'll talk about how we can kick it up. You're going to notice that there's no salt in this, and there's a reason for that. So let's just take a moment and talk about that salt. The reason why there isn't any salt in my rub is because I am salting and dry brining this chuck the night before. Highly recommend you do that. If you don't do that, then I'm going to say salt to taste. But salt is going to be one of those spices in the range of spices here that can really be affected by the accumulation of all these things coming together. So go easy on the salt. You'll notice that there's not very much salt in this entire cook. And one of the reasons why that is because I have some other things that I know have salt in them. The beans are going to have salt in them. We're even going to rinse them, but they still have a lot of salt in them. The tomatoes are going to have some salt in them. Now, you could go get the low sodium stuff, but for me, the way the salt balances out, I don't have to add very much salt just because I know what the salt is that's coming along for the ride. So just keep that in mind as you're moving forward through this, and really, really hold off on the urge to throw a bunch of salt or a bunch of anything into any one pot or on any one section of the meat. Now guys, depending on how agile you are in the kitchen or how much help you might have, this cook can get a little bit complex. Not because it's hard, just because there's going to be several things going on simultaneously. If you're doing the full cook and following my directions, you're going to have a pit to deal with, or at least a 2-zone setup on a grill to deal with. You're going to have to deal with a couple of pots of things going in. They're going to be cooking in a little bit of a staggered setup. So there's a period of time during this cook where it's a bit of a whirlwind of stuff going on. It doesn't last very long, but there's a period of time where you're kind of multitasking. To help ease the pain of that and to organize, you need to organize. And that means you need to do some prep. We've already made the Azrael's Pit Barbecue quick beef rub. Set that aside. Go ahead and cut those onions up. Just chop them up to even piles. Go ahead and open and drain and rinse your beans. Set them aside. Go ahead and open the cans of the tomatoes. Anything that you can do ahead of time. And before you really start cooking, clean up from your prep. Reset your kitchen, reset your space, so that when it's cook time, and you're not scrambling over things and trying to wash pots and just getting the pile up. So those are my tips for you to make this cook go nice, quick, and easy. So guys, what we're going to do is we're going to take this roast. This is about a 4-pound roast I've got here. Pretty much just going to kind of cut it right down the middle. I'm kind of giving a little bit of that fat line you can see down there with the rib cap. I'm giving that fat line a little bit of weight on both sides. Of course, then there's the marbling throughout. One of these is going to get rubbed up, go on the cooker. The other one's going to get cut up into pieces and seasoned, go through our grinder. So as I often do before I apply a rub, I'm going to put a little thin coat of olive oil on this cut of chuck here. This is just going to be purely as a binder. And once I get done with that, we're going to go ahead and apply our rub to this. And I'm gonna say you can be relatively generous with this. You don't have to go crazy, but this is ultimately gonna get cut into chunks and bite-sized pieces. It's gonna be applied to our final product. This seasoning is gonna become part of the accumulative here. So I think at the end of the day, you can go a little heavier. I mean, I just wouldn't cake it on. Now, as soon as your cooker or grill or whatever you got set up is ready to go ahead and get that chuck on and get it started. So now that we got the piece that's going to go on the pit ready, I'm going to take the other half of this chuck, I'm going to cut it up into some strips, and ultimately season this meat and throw it into my grinder. Now, if you're not going to do this portion and you're going to use a ground beef you bought from the store, that's fine. Again, as I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure you got a coarse grind, or what they call a chili grind. In my case, our coarse grind is going to be on a 1/2 inch plate, so it's going to be some pretty coarse ground meat, and that's exactly what we want here. You're going to go ahead and take your rub that we had and mix it into your ground beef, and I'm going to basically say do this kind of by feel. I can't really give you an amount for that because that's not the way I do it. So just maybe go a little bit easy, see how it's going. You can always add more later. So for us, I'm going to season this on both sides, then I'm going to go and throw it into the grinder. So as soon as I get that meat ready to go, I'm going straight to the grinder. I've already gone ahead and put a pot on the stove and it is heating up. I'm going to get this grinder set up. I'm throwing the meat in, one pass, straight into the pan. I'm going to make it relatively hot, looking for a really quick sear type browning on this meat. I'm going to pull it out, drain it, and set it aside. Generally speaking, I will take mine, put a little covering on it, and sit in the oven just to hold until I'm ready to throw it into the chili here in just a little bit. Guys, it is time for us to finally get cooking. The pot on the left is going to be our beans. Pot on the right is going to be our meat and our final assembly pot. So I've got these set up. The pot on the left, our bean pot, is about a medium-high heat. The pot on the right is about a medium heat. And the reason why this is, I need these to kind of be slightly behind each other. I need my bean pot ahead of my, and a little bit hotter than my meat pot on the right. Otherwise, things will get a little chaotic. So I've got my onions in both. I'm basically sweating these and doing a little bit of a sauteing, not so much a caramelization, which would be a lower heat and a longer process. Once the onions get to where they're, getting limp and starting to get a little bit opaque, at that point, we're gonna start adding things like our garlic and our seasonings. Once our onions are ready in the bean pot, the pot on the left, I'm gonna put a heaping tablespoon of a roasted minced garlic in each pot. I'm gonna give these a stir. This is not gonna take very long at all. Basically, once the garlic is pretty fragrant, and that's gonna be maybe about a minute, if that much. Keep a close eye on this. You do not want that garlic to burn. Once those onions are ready in that bean pot, go ahead and put in your seasonings for the beans. This is not the APB Quick Rub. This is the seasonings for the beans. Go ahead and dump it all in and just stir it around real good, kind of coating all the onions and the garlic that's in there. This is gonna allow the seasonings to kind of release a little bit of those oil-soluble properties before we start dumping a bunch of water in here. You're gonna go a minute, maybe a minute and a half at the most, and then get ready to pour in your chicken stock. And in goes our 1 cup of chicken stock, and here comes your special extra surprise. That's right, it's the Azrael's Pit Barbecue Steam Facial Cleansing special service we offer, because Azrael's Pit Barbecue, when it comes to your skin, we care. Now, after about a minute and a half, we're gonna throw in our pasilla sauce. So again, I'm using the Herdez cooking sauces. If you want a little more heat at this point, you might try something different here. You could use a chile sauce that you have perhaps made yourself. The key to this is we want to start this off with a balance of heat against savory. We don't want to just blow our mouths out with heat. And again, we've got the ancho and other things in here that will be accumulative. Even the black pepper is going to factor in here. So I say at this point, if you're going to put something a bit warmer in than that pasilla might be, stay on the low end of the spectrum. Let's wait until this starts to come together before we decide how much we really want to kick up that heat. After about a minute or two, we're going to go ahead and dump in our beans. You want to mix this up thoroughly, turn down the heat, and put the cover on, and we'll turn our attention to that meat pot. So now this is going to be a little bit easier, and it's going to go a little bit faster. First things first, we're going to add our seasonings for the beef. Now keep in mind, this is not the beef rub. This is the seasonings specific to the beef in the pot. Make sure you check that recipe. We're going to mix this all together just like we did before. Give it just a couple, 3 minutes to hang out and get some extraction of some flavors out of those seasonings. Then we're going to add our tomatoes. We're going to add our rest of the chicken stock. And then we're going to add that ground beef that we browned just a little bit ago. That should be nearby, hanging out. All right, guys, at this point, you can take a breath. I know it is a bit of a whirlwind getting these pots going, but to be honest with you, it really doesn't take that long to get this done. It's just, you know, you got a few things going, you got to multitask just a little bit. And don't forget, you should have a chuck roast out on the smoker outside. You might want to go check on that. Hey, what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to probably stir my bean pot from time to time. This should be kind of really low, not even, just barely simmering. Keep it stirring, make sure it doesn't get too thick. And on my meat pot, I usually let this cook down just a little bit. So I'm going to leave the lid off. I'm going to run it low, at a low simmer, and I'm going to just let it reduce a little bit. How thin or thick you like your chili is going to really matter, is going to determine how much you want to let this cook down. So I'm going to leave the top off. I'm going to let it cook down, and I might should go check on my pet. All right, guys, once your beef is ready to come off, right about 120, I would say would be good. Bring it on in and give it a cut. Now, if you are one of those people who doesn't like rare, medium rare meat and that kind of stuff, do not overcook this because you don't think it's cooked. This is going to go in these pots in the mix here. It's going to cook for a couple, 3 more hours at least. This meat will be cooked. If you cook it to medium well, or higher on your pit for some crazy reason, this stuff is going to be tough as rocks. So cook it medium, low end, medium rare, high end of rare. Get us all cut up. If you see any major fatty pieces, trim that out and dump it right into that pot. We're going to give this all a mix. Now at this point, we're just kind of in a little bit of a waiting game, and you notice now why I told you to have at least a 6-7 quart pot here. As the meat pot is filling up, the beans are going to go into that pot. In the meantime, the beans have been reducing and pretty much turn into a sauce themselves. I want you to see this. This is about what we're looking for. Don't let it get any thicker than that. If it does, add a little bit of water. Better yet, add a little bit of chicken stock. But you see what's going on here? We have now taken the bean side of this and incorporated this. This is basically a chili sauce. This is the basis for our chili sauce, chili with beans. The beans are going to add some texture, and they're also going to add some layers of flavors here. As you bite into the bean, it's going to have a particular flavor to it. As you get into the ground beef, it'll have a particular flavor to it. As you get a piece of the meat, the chunk of meat is going to have a different flavor to it. All this is going to play off each other, and all of that's going to come together to start bringing up the heat of this dish. And now's the time we need to start thinking about where you might want to go in terms of that heat. So after about an hour, we're going to take our lids off, give everything a little look-see, and we're going to take our beans and combine it with our meat side officially bringing the 3 cooks together into one. Stir these up real good, and then we're gonna have ourselves a taste test. Now we just threw all this together, so these flavors have not had time to meld and party and really come together like we'd like to, but this is going to be a very good baseline of where we are. We've done things right. You should have a nice savory stew with some really nice textures. You should have a little bit of warmth, a little bit of peppery chili warmth in the back of your mouth. And at this point, you want to increase the heat. Now's the time to do it. I will recommend that you stick to things that aren't going to be too terribly bright in terms of their flavor, and I would definitely advise staying away from any type of sauce that is heavily vinegar based, because that could really wreck the profile that we've built. Either way, put in about half as much as you think you want to. Put the lid on that pot, or put the lid on it and stick it in the oven, either way, and let it go for about an hour on low. Come back and try it out, see where you are. If you need some more heat, add a little bit more and let it go. And I would recommend you go at least 2 hours on a low heat before you're ready to serve this up. Well guys, take a look at this. Man, it's been about 6 hours in the cook total. It can go longer, not gonna hurt it. We're just going nice and low. You may notice here, this is about the consistency that I like it. It's a bit of a stew, but it's not too terribly thick. It's a little bit thin. If you don't like this, you can cook it out longer and let it reduce more. It's just going to intensify the overall flavors. Or you can smash up some of the beans on the side. That'll help thicken it up. Or you could even put a little bit of corn masa in here if you like. But just if you do that, be super, super careful, because corn masa can have a relatively strong flavor as compared to everything else. Well folks, there you have it. Chili con carne with beans, APB style. Really hope you enjoyed this video, and I really hope you try this recipe, and I'd love to hear about your results. I'd love to hear about your changes. I'd love to hear about how you heated it up. I would just love to hear about your experience in general. So get down in that comment section, leave a comment below. If you haven't subscribed to our channel before, please hit that like and subscribe button. Until next time, this is Chris with Azrael's Pit Barbecue. Keep that smoke rolling.